Work cover rip-offs. We've heard of workers rorting the system, but in this extraordinary story, the boot is on the other foot. Alex Mericka was injured at work 18 years ago and has fought a court case against all odds to prove the corporation had coerced him into a shoddy deal without the proper checks and balances. Graham Archer has the story of one man's victory against the system.
Your advice was also incorrect, wasn't it? Because he won.
But there is no incorrect advice.
It just surprised me that much. I couldn't believe it, you know, and I still can't believe it today.
How could a bloke like me do this? Because the first day I went to court, I remember the judge that was there basically asked me who I thought I was coming into his court.
You left him to represent himself and he won.
I cannot discuss my clients, I'm sorry.
And he won, no thanks to you.
It's as good as Phar Lap coming back and winning again. It is that huge.
It's an amazing story of alleged compo fraud, not by a worker, but by work cover itself.
We're talking about documentation that purported to have been formally signed by me in the presence of solicitors to say that I wish to be put off the work cover system, and certainly that wasn't the case.
18 years ago, Alex Mericka injured his back at work while attempting to stop a runaway steamroller.
It was that back pain which led to your total disability, effectively.
Absolutely.
And it set him on another collision course, this time with Work Cover Corporation.
At no time was his future or his comfort or ability to live well a concern for Work Cover Corporation.
By 1997, mounting debt meant Work Cover was desperate to get people like Alex off the books via redemptions, cash settlements ending all further claims. But it was supposed to be a process based on strict rules.
Well, I was supposed to be given advice about the amount, financial advice about the amount.
And were you?
Well, no. I didn't receive financial advice.
What about the legal advice?
I was supposed to be told whether the whole situation was legally sound and how it may affect me for the rest of my life.
And did you get that legal advice?
No, I did not.
At that time, Alex was represented by law firm Leschke and Wetherell. His lawyer, Stephen Leschke, later became an industrial court judge after his legal partner, Jay Wetherell, entered politics.
How did they perform?
It was a matter of a turnstile type attitude. You go in, you pay your money, see the show, and you leave.
In fact, the firm failed Alex dismally, allowing him to be duped by a redemption that would mean a life of poverty and pain.
$80,000 for the rest of my life. The $20,000 for medical, that's for medical, rehabilitation, care, anything required for the rest of my life, not full retirement, but the rest of my life.
Okay. Now fast forward 14 years. Alex, who has an uncontrollable benign tremor, is in constant pain, requires a back brace, and is forced to spend much of his time in a special chair. On top of that, he and his wife, Michelle, have had no option but to launch a long, bitter legal battle to expose the dirty deeds he'd suffered and, against all odds, seek some justice.
I would worry all the time about him because, I mean, he had already attempted his life once during that period when this first happened.
The couple had few supporters, but some stood by them.
I wouldn't have been able to carry on with it, and I'm pretty sure Alex wouldn't either. You know, it's just, she was amazing, so I think that's how we got through it.
They were running out of friends very fast. Even family members were deserting them, which was a hard thing to have them go through.
Rosemary Mackenzie Ferguson is herself an injured worker who now devotes her time unfunded to others like Alex battling the system.
It just sounded too bizarre. It really did. It was something that a fiction writer would come up with.
They'd approached scores of politicians. Few were interested. Only independents, Rob Brokenshire and most of all Anne Bressington, stepped up.
There's got to be a culture shift in here as well as a culture shift within the corporation itself.
He tried 34 lawyers before he found one, Francis Eloquacci. No question the stakes were high. Alex was not only putting to the court that he'd been railroaded into a dodgy redemption, but that the process itself was corrupt.
What evidence did you have for that?
The documentation, the financial advice certificate that I had a name of an individual on there I'd never met before. Also, I was concerned with the signature on there because I knew I hadn't signed that document, and also the signature, my name was misspelt, and I wouldn't misspell my name when signing a document.
So the certificate saying that you'd received advice was signed by someone you'd never met?
Correct.
And your signature was misspelled?
That's correct.
Though in the end the judge made no finding on forgery or corruption, according to Alex's court submissions, the racket at that time was widespread.
I was told that financial advice certificates were being gathered in bulk, shipped off to an individual and basically just signed and sent back to the corporation.
So when it came to those forms, no one was getting advice?
That's correct.
To support his case, he called on handwriting expert Talbot Wilson, who found a work cover agent had held his hand to steady the tremor in order to help him sign away his rights. And at least one signature was forged and others were suspect.
So that must have been very encouraging to get that report.
Correct. The whole thing was questionable, and I felt it warranted a police investigation.
But he was in for the first of many upsets when Mr. Eloquacci, to counter WorkCover's own expert, commissioned a second report from Talbot Wilson which completely contradicted his first. He even claimed Alex's tremors were phony.
Having this man say, or you know, that he's going to do a second report, and in that he's going to say, you know, that Alex hasn't got tremors, just unbelievable.
To add to his problems, Talbot Wilson then wrote Alex this letter demanding payment for the second report and threatening to expose his whole case as fraudulent.
That's correct, unless I paid him money.
The judge would eventually describe Talbot Wilson's claims as ludicrous, but this was only the start of Alex's ordeal. Next, Mr. Eloquacci began disagreeing with his instructions.
They didn't want me to bring in Judge Litschke. Judge Litschke, back in 1997, was the lawyer who was representing me in my work cover interests.
They also objected to Alex's psychiatrist's crucial medical evidence.
My solicitors not only didn't want him there, they didn't want his report to come into the case.
You didn't want him to lead the evidence that, in fact, in the end, won him the case.
I cannot discuss my client.
You didn't want Stephen Litschke called to the stand.
That's incorrect.
Why was that?
Under these troubled circumstances, in April 2008, the trial got underway. Within weeks, Alex suffered a breakdown and collapsed in the witness box. It was then Mr. Eloquacci told him he had no hope of winning. Eloquacci claimed he'd contradicted his own evidence, and if he didn't try to cut a deal to settle the fees, which he was prepared to discount, he'd cease to act for him.
That's when he cut me adrift. He severed all ties.
You left him.
No comment. That's not correct.
To represent himself.
And he wanted his bill paid immediately.
And that was $438,000.
Yes, it was. $438,000.
In total?
In total. And I don't know how it got to that figure, and that in itself scared the blazes out of me. I think we'll give him 14 days to pay.
Eloquacci put it in writing that if he didn't agree to the conditions, he'd sell up his house to recover the fees.
And you, Mr. Eloquacci, would have taken his house? In fact, you've charged him for the caveat on his property. How can you do that?
Having almost given up, he then chose to fight on.
We tried over 34 different law firms in their state.
Couldn't get one.
Couldn't get one.
So with Michelle's help, he decided to represent himself.
Let's see.
Alex set about proving he was coerced into signing the redemption documents by the General Manager of FAI, Ruth Mitchell, WorkCover's insurer, standing over him and guiding his hand as he signed.
And she was explaining to me how this was good for me or this would be over soon. And I think that's when we were signing things together.
Judge Trevor Olsen oversaw the case. He was remarkably patient and fair. And a couple of weeks ago, after 5 months of deliberation, he delivered his 105-page judgment.
And you won.
That's correct, yes. And we're delighted.
It's a victory that will never be mirrored anywhere ever again.
This is a monumental win for injured workers, I believe.
Aside from dismissing Ruth Mitchell as a dishonest witness, the judge found fellow judge Stephen Litschke had also failed Alex.
The advice, well, seemingly by the words of the Act, was not competent in any way or form.
And during the court process, Litschke handed WorkCover Alex's confidential documents.
I didn't give permission for any of that to occur.
Leschke's partner, Jay Weatherall, although not acting for Alex, told the court the firm used a detailed checklist to ensure things were done properly.
Was there any evidence to show this document actually existed?
No, none whatsoever.
It's a bit like they were rewriting the history after the event.
That's my understanding.
The judge again made no finding on this, but ultimately found his redemptions were invalid as the actions of WorkCover's agents were unconscionable and he'd never received competent advice.
And I'm hoping that the comments of Judge Olsen in that matter will fire a warning shot across the bow of any lawyers or law firms that purport to want to assist injured workers, that they do the right thing.
Alex's amazing win attracted congratulations from many quarters, including from Mr. Eloquacci, who wrote saying, "We are proud to have played a role in your matter." He and Mr. Britton then turned up to court seeking their fees.
I'm just wondering how you can justify fees of $450,000.
My fees are with the tax accountant at the moment.
Alex has not yet submitted his own submission on costs, but he and Michelle's reward is already apparent.
It says get out there and fight. A fight for your rights, it really does.
And that's all we ever wanted, was to get the truth told, and hearing the judge say those things, you know, and in his decision, you know, seeing them, you know, it was just amazing to know that, you know, we're not the bad people here.
Did you ever think you'd see this day?
To be quite honest, no. I felt that I could get my story out more than anything. I don't know anything about legal points or how things are applied or anything like that. I just wanted someone to listen to me.
Well, what an extraordinary job he's done. Now, Mr. Eloquacci and Mr. Britton are adamant it was their professional duty to withdraw, as they couldn't ethically continue to act under such contradictory conditions. Well, Alex's victory is likely to have a profound effect on future cases. That was Graham Archer's report.